What if the greatest tragedy is not dying, but living a life without purpose? We live in a world full of noise, distraction, and endless choices. We wake up, we scroll, we consume, we chase the next reward. Yet, deep down, there's a question that refuses to die. Why am I here? This question haunted the ancient Greeks. It haunted philosophers, kings, warriors, poets, and it still haunts us today. The search for meaning is not a luxury of philosophers, it is the very essence of being human. Over 2,000 years ago, Aristotle gave us a word, telos. In Greek, it means the ultimate purpose, the final end, the goal toward which everything is directed. A seed has a telos to become a tree. A bow has a telos to send an arrow flying. And you, as a human being, have a telos. For Aristotle, this telos was not wealth, not fame, not pleasure. It was something higher. He called it eudaimonia, human flourishing, the deep fulfillment of living in harmony with your true nature. And so, we begin with the first truth, the cornerstone of our entire journey into purpose. Every life, including yours, has a purpose, a telos. Aristotle wrote in his Nicomachean Ethics, every action and every pursuit is thought to aim at some good. Meaning, everything you do, consciously or not, points towards some end, some goal. The question is, do you know yours? In our modern age, many people confuse survival with purpose. They wake up, go to work, pay bills, and hope for small pleasures in between. That is existence, not purpose. Neuroscience today echoes Aristotle's insight. Research shows that the human brain is wired not just for survival, but for meaning. Dopamine pushes us toward rewards, but serotonin and oxytocin, the chemicals of long-term well-being and connection, are tied to significance, belonging, and higher goals. Without telos, the brain drifts. With telos, the brain thrives. Let me take you back to Athens, around 335 BC. Imagine Aristotle walking slowly through the shaded paths of the Lyceum, surrounded by young students. One of them asks, "Teacher, what is the purpose of life?" Aristotle pauses, then points to an acorn. "You see this seed? Within it is the purpose of becoming a mighty oak. Likewise, within you lies a seed, the seed of your highest self. Your purpose is not random, it is written into your very being." Now bring this forward to today. Imagine a young professional, working long hours, scrolling endlessly at night, asking, "Is this all there is?" The truth is, they are not empty. They are simply disconnected from their seed of telos. Your life is like a bow. Without a target, the bow is useless. But once you define the target, the string tightens, the arrow finds direction, and energy is released. Purpose gives you aim. Without it, you remain unstrung. Purpose precedes progress. So let me ask you, what is the seed within you? What is the oak tree you are meant to become? This is not about a career title or a temporary goal. This is about the deep telos, the kind of life that, when you are old and looking back, you will say, "This was worth it." Because every life has a telos, including yours. And yet, here's the danger. Many mistake pleasure for purpose. We live in a culture of instant gratification, chasing likes, money, entertainment. But as Aristotle would remind us, and as modern neuroscience confirms, pleasure is not the same as purpose. That is where we turn next. Pleasure is not purpose. In the ancient world, not everyone agreed with Aristotle. Epicurus, another philosopher, believed the goal of life was to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. His followers thought that if you could just enjoy good food, good company, and avoid suffering, you would be happy. But Aristotle disagreed. He warned, "The life of pleasure is a life fit for beasts." Why? Because pleasure is temporary. It comes and goes. Purpose, on the other hand, endures. Neuroscience backs this up. When you chase pleasures scrolling on your phone, binge watching, eating junk food, even chasing money and status, your brain releases dopamine. It feels good, but only for a moment. Soon, the brain adapts, and you need more. It's a cycle of diminishing returns. But when your actions are aligned with purpose, your brain releases serotonin and oxytocin, chemicals of long-term well-being and belonging. These are not spikes, they are steady states. Purpose sustains you. Pleasure drains you. Think of a billionaire who has everything: mansions, cars, parties, luxury, and yet he lies awake at night, feeling empty. Why? Because his life is rich in pleasure, but poor in purpose. Now contrast that with someone like Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps. Surrounded by suffering, stripped of every comfort, he still found meaning in helping fellow prisoners. He discovered that pleasure can vanish overnight, but purpose cannot be taken away. Pleasure is like sugar, sweet, addictive, but short-lived. Pleasure is like sugar, sweet, addictive, but short-lived. Purpose is like bread. It sustains life. You cannot live on sugar alone, but with bread, you endure. Chasing pleasure is not chasing purpose. So let me ask you, where in your life are you chasing sugar instead of bread? Where are you trading long-term meaning for short-term pleasure? Remember, pleasure is not evil, but it is not enough. Pleasure without purpose leads to emptiness. Purpose, even with little pleasure, leads to fulfillment. And this brings us to the next truth. If pleasure is not purpose, then what role does pain play? Can pain itself become meaningful? That is our next destination. Pain can be purposeful. Centuries after Aristotle, another thinker faced unimaginable suffering. His name was Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. Frankl wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." This echoes Aristotle's idea of telos. Pain, when connected to purpose, is not meaningless. It becomes fuel. Pain by itself is brutal. It breaks you. But when pain is tied to a greater purpose, it transforms. Neuroscience shows this too. Studies on athletes, soldiers, even mothers in childbirth reveal that when the brain links pain to meaning, to growth, to love, to survival of others, the perception of suffering changes. Pain doesn't disappear, but it becomes bearable. Purpose rewires pain into strength. Think of Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison. If his suffering was pointless, he would have been crushed. But Mandela turned his pain into preparation. His Telos, the liberation of South Africa, gave those years meaning. When he walked free, he was not broken, he was forged. Pain is fire. Without purpose, it burns and destroys. With purpose, it forges steel. Your suffering can either be your prison or your furnace. Suffering without meaning is despair. Suffering with purpose is growth. So let me ask you, what pain are you carrying today? Is it meaningless, or can it be reframed as part of your telos? Every scar tells a story, but only you decide whether it's a story of defeat or a story of transformation. If pain can hold meaning, then what about purpose itself? Is it something we invent, or is it already inside us waiting to be revealed? That is the question we face next. Purpose is discovered, not invented. Aristotle believed that everything has a function, a role built into its very essence. The telos of a knife is to cut. The telos of an eye is to see. And the telos of a human being is to live in accordance with reason and virtue, to flourish in harmony with their nature. In other words, purpose is not something you randomly make up. It is something you uncover, like a sculptor chiseling away stone to reveal the form already within. In modern culture, people are often told, you can be anything you want, just invent yourself. But this freedom, without direction, often leads to confusion and paralysis. The truth is, you are not a blank slate. You carry within you certain gifts, tendencies, passions, and values that point toward your purpose. Neuroscience calls this your default wiring, the natural inclinations shaped by both genetics and experience. Discovering purpose is less about invention and more about alignment. It's not creating something artificial, but recognizing the truth that's already inside. Michelangelo, when asked how he sculpted the David, said, "I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free." That's how purpose works. It's already within you, hidden beneath layers of fear, distraction, and conditioning. Think of Helen Keller. Born deaf and blind, many thought her life was destined for darkness. But her teacher, Anne Sullivan, helped her discover her inner voice. She didn't invent purpose, she uncovered it. And that discovery allowed her to inspire millions. Your purpose is like buried treasure. You don't create the gold, you dig to find it. The map is your curiosity. The shovel is your courage. And the treasure is already waiting. Your purpose is not made, it's revealed. So let me ask you, what are the hints of your purpose that you've been ignoring? The activities that make you lose track of time. The moments that spark energy instead of draining it. The values you would defend even if it cost you. Don't try to invent who you are. Discover who you already are. And once you begin to uncover this purpose, you'll notice something. True purpose is not selfish. It is always tied to virtue, to becoming not just successful, but good. That is our next truth. Purpose aligns with virtue. Aristotle's greatest work, the Nicomachean Ethics, reminds us that the good life is not measured by wealth, power, or pleasure, but by arete, excellence of character, what we call virtue. For Aristotle, Telos is inseparable from virtue. A man cannot live with true purpose if he lives without integrity, without courage, without justice. Purpose without virtue becomes a legacy. In our modern world, many chase success without asking, is this good? Is this just? A company may grow fast, but destroy the environment. A leader may gain power, but betray trust. This is purpose without virtue, and it collapses in the long run. Neuroscience tells us that acts of integrity, kindness, and generosity activate the brain's reward pathways more deeply than selfish gains. Our biology itself confirms what Aristotle taught. Living virtuously is wired into our flourishing. Virtue doesn't limit purpose. Virtue elevates purpose. Think of Gandhi. His purpose was freedom for India, but his means were nonviolence and truth, satyagraha. Without virtue, his cause could have descended into hatred and bloodshed. But because it was anchored in virtue, his purpose inspired not just a nation, but the entire world. Or consider Abraham Lincoln. His telos was not merely to preserve the Union, but to preserve it in justice, by ending slavery. Without that alignment with virtue, his leadership would have been hollow. Purpose without virtue is like a ship with full sails but no compass. It moves fast, but in the wrong direction. Purpose with virtue is the compass that guides your journey toward the true north of eudaimonia. Virtue is the compass of purpose. So let me ask you, does your ambition align with your values? Would you still choose the same path if it required honesty instead of shortcuts, courage instead of comfort, justice instead of personal gain? Because your telos is not simply what you achieve, it's how you achieve it. Purpose without virtue is noise. Purpose with virtue is harmony. And yet, even when aligned with virtue, purpose needs boundaries. For without direction, freedom itself can become chaos. That is the truth we will explore next. Without purpose, freedom becomes chaos. Dostoevsky once wrote, "Without meaning, man becomes a monster." Aristotle, too, warned that freedom is not the highest good. Freedom is only valuable when it is directed toward telos, toward the flourishing life. Without telos, freedom becomes license. License becomes addiction. And addiction becomes chains. We live in the freest era of human history. You can choose your career, your partner, your city, your lifestyle. But paradoxically, never have people been more lost, anxious, and dissatisfied. Why? Because freedom without telos is like wandering an endless supermarket with no shopping list. You have infinite options, but no direction. Neuroscience confirms this. The brain, when overwhelmed by too many choices, experiences decision fatigue. Without a guiding purpose, we burn out in a sea of options, scrolling endlessly, chasing distractions, yet never finding fulfillment. Purpose disciplines freedom. It gives your yes weight and your no clarity. Look at the modern phenomenon of social media. Billions of people free to post, to speak, to consume anything they want, and yet so many drown in comparison, envy, and despair. Contrast this with someone like Martin Luther King Jr. He had freedom, but it was bound by telos, justice, and equality. His purpose disciplined his freedom. He did not waste his voice. He aimed it like an arrow. Freedom without purpose is like a river that spills over its banks. It floods, it destroys. Freedom with purpose is a river within its channel. Powerful, life-giving, unstoppable. Purpose disciplines freedom. So, let me ask you, in what areas of your life are you mistaking freedom for direction? Are you saying yes to everything, and therefore saying no to what truly matters? Your telos is not to live without limits. It is to live with the right limits, chosen with wisdom. And once you understand that freedom needs purpose, you'll see something else. Our telos is never solitary. Purpose is not just about me, it is about us. That is where we now turn. Purpose connects us to others. Aristotle wrote, "Man is by nature a social animal. No one can flourish in isolation." Your telos is never just about you. It is always interwoven with others, family, friends, community, humanity. In the modern age, people often confuse independence with isolation, but neuroscience shows that human connection is not optional, it is survival. Oxytocin, the hormone of bonding, literally heals stress, strengthens immunity, and increases resilience. Purpose is amplified when it serves more than just the self. A life centered only on me eventually collapses into emptiness. But a life lived for we expands into legacy. Consider Mother Teresa. Her purpose was inseparable from serving others, the sick, the abandoned, the forgotten. She once said, "A life not lived for others is not a life." Or think of Martin Luther King Jr. His telos was not only personal fulfillment, but collective freedom. His voice became the voice of millions because his purpose was relational, not selfish. Purpose is like fire. Alone, it warms only you. Shared, it lights an entire village. Purpose grows in connection. So let me ask you, who benefits from your purpose? If your telos begins and ends with you, it will soon feel hollow. But if it uplifts others, it will grow beyond your lifetime. And yet, purpose is not static. Just as relationships evolve, so too does your telos. It changes as you grow, as you pass through the stages of life. Which leads us to the next truth. Purpose evolves with life stages. Modern psychology echoes Aristotle's wisdom. Erik Erikson, the great developmental psychologist, described human life as a series of stages, each with its own challenges, each with its own purpose. The purpose of youth is identity. The purpose of adulthood is contribution. The purpose of old age is wisdom and legacy. Purpose is not a single sentence you write once and never change. It grows with you. In your 20s, telos may be exploration, discovering who you are. In your 40s, telos may be building, raising a family, contributing to work or society. In your 70s, telos may be reflection, distilling lessons, passing wisdom to others. This is not weakness, this is strength. Just as a tree changes shape but remains the same tree, so too your telos transforms but remains authentically yours. Consider Nelson Mandela again. As a young man, his telos was rebellion against injustice. In prison, his telos evolved into resilience and preparation. As president, his telos became reconciliation and nation building. Or think of Steve Jobs. In his early years, his telos was innovation at all costs. Later in life, after facing death, his telos evolved into simplicity, beauty, and creating products that enriched humanity. Purpose matures as we mature. Purpose is like a river. In youth, it's a rapid stream. In adulthood, it's a wide current. In old age, it becomes a calm but powerful flow. Different stages, same river. Your telos matures as you do. So let me ask you, what stage are you in? And what does purpose look like here and now? Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Embrace the evolution. Don't cling to an old purpose that no longer fits. And don't fear that a new purpose means betrayal of the past. It is all one story, your story unfolding. And if purpose can evolve across a lifetime, then we begin to see how even small, daily purposes can add up to something greater, a legacy. That is our next step. Small purposes lead to great legacies. Aristotle taught that character is not formed by one grand act, but by habits, repeated choices that shape who we are. Purpose works the same way. It is built not only in heroic moments, but in small, consistent acts of meaning. In a culture obsessed with instant success and overnight fame, we often underestimate the power of the ordinary. Yet neuroscience reveals that small, repeated actions literally rewire the brain. Habits of service, gratitude, integrity build neural pathways that become our identity. Purpose does not arrive fully formed. It is cultivated, moment by moment. Great lives are not made by one decision, but by thousands of small purposes aligned in the same direction. Think of Mother Teresa. She didn't set out to win a Nobel Prize. She simply chose, day after day, to care for one sick person at a time. Small purposes, repeated with love, became a global legacy. Or think of Rosa Parks. One small act, refusing to give up her seat, became the spark for an entire civil rights movement. A simple decision, but aligned with purpose, it changed history. Purpose is like bricks. One by one, they don't look like much, but laid carefully, they build a cathedral. Little purposes, lasting impact. So let me ask you, what small act of purpose can you choose today? A conversation, a kindness, a moment of honesty. Never underestimate the small. The small is what builds the great. But if small purposes build greatness, the absence of purpose builds tragedy. And this is perhaps the deepest truth of all. Living without purpose is the greatest tragedy. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." To live without purpose is not just to die one day, it is to die a little each day. The real death is not the end of life, but a life unlived. Modern society gives us comfort, entertainment, distraction, but these are not substitutes for telos. Without purpose, life becomes routine. Wake, work, consume, repeat. Neuroscience shows that a lack of meaning is linked to depression, anxiety, even physical illness. Purpose is not just spiritual poetry, it is biological necessity. The tragedy is not death itself. The tragedy is regret. Steve Jobs, facing death, said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." Think of the millions who reach old age and whisper, If only I had lived true to myself. If only I had taken the risk. If only I had followed my purpose." That is the heaviest weight, the weight of a life wasted. To live without purpose is like owning a ship, but never leaving the harbor. Safe, perhaps, but the ocean was where you were meant to sail. The real death is a purposeless life. So let me ask you, are you truly living, or are you just existing? When the final chapter comes, will you look back with pride or with regret? Purpose is not guaranteed, it is chosen, and not choosing is the greatest loss of all. And this brings us full circle. We began with Aristotle's question, what is the good life? Now we know. It is the life of Telos, a life of virtue, a life that transforms pain, disciplines freedom, connects with others, and leaves a legacy. The question that remains is simple. Will you live it? We began with a question that has echoed across centuries. What is the purpose of life? Aristotle gave us an answer. Telos, the ultimate end, the true aim of being human. And through this journey, we discovered 10 truths. 1. Every life has a telos. 2. Pleasure is not purpose. 3. Pain can be purposeful. 4. Purpose is discovered, not invented. 5. Purpose aligns with virtue. 6. Without purpose, freedom becomes chaos. 7. Purpose connects us to others. 8. Purpose evolves with life stages. 9. Small purposes lead to great legacies. 10. Living without purpose is the greatest tragedy. Put together, these truths form a map that guides you away from noise and distraction toward a life of meaning, virtue, and fulfillment. Your Telos is not just your career. It is not just your comfort. It is the story of who you are becoming, the oak tree hidden in the seed, the statue hidden in the marble, the river carving its path to the sea. The question is not, what do you want from life? The real question is, what does life want from you? So when your final day comes, may you look back not with regret, but with gratitude. Not with questions, but with answers. Not with emptiness, but with fullness. Because you lived your Telos. You lived your purpose. If this message resonated with you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel, not for more noise, but for more clarity, more wisdom. Share in the comments, what do you believe is your Telos? And if you know someone who feels lost, share this video with them. You never know, your act might be the spark that awakens their purpose. Together, let's not just exist, let's live with Telos.